Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Polity Quick Revision series. So in this video, we'll talk about the Union and its territories. So here we'll take a look at the evolution of the states and union territories in India. The power of the parliament to reorganize the states, we'll explore that as well. Exchanging territories with neighboring countries, how is that done? And many such interesting things. So without any further delay, let's get started.
What is a union territory? I'm not asking for a definition, but what do you understand by that? Right. So basically the states are members, okay, of the federal system in India, okay, and they have some sort of a distribution of power. Okay, you have, you guys remember, right? There's a state list, you have your central list, you have your union list. The state in the constitution, the 7th schedule of the constitution itself tells you what are the clear areas of your state. Where exactly do they have their powers? Okay, what exactly are, pretty much like, under their authority. But you will notice there are certain territories, there are union territories, and they come under the direct control and administration of the central government. Okay, and hence they are called, quote unquote, centrally administered territories. Centrally administered, as you know well about, or is it your Pondicherry that you know more about? I guess Pondicherry is called Puducherry these days, right? No, you guys have never been to Pondi or to Delhi? See, when we say it is centrally administered, we mean that it is not the president sitting there and, taking care of the day-to-day affairs. But then there is a lieutenant governor or, some sort of an administrator in that particular area. Delhi and Pondicherry are 2 union territories, okay, and then Jammu Kashmir recently as well. So there are 3 union territories that have a legislative assembly as well. But assuming, okay, keeping, be that as it may, just keep that aside for now. Okay, you have an administrator in that place known by sort of different terms in different parts of the different union territories. Now, this particular person is not like a governor. Governor is generally appointed by the center, right, by the president, okay, and the governor has to act. Okay, if you guys remember your 74, 75 and Article 78, what do they say? That there should be a council of ministers headed by the prime minister who shall advise the president to act in, with the aid and advice of this council of ministers headed by the PM, right? But here you don't have that. So this administrator is sort of free. Okay, so a little more sort of power, a little more sort of authority of the center in these places. But that does not mean there is a lot of confusion between the center and the state when it comes to Delhi and Pondi, despite you seeing these sort of cases that keep cropping up. Okay, there are some, of course, yes, it is true, but the constitution sort of makes some sort of a delineation between what is the role of the legislative assembly when it comes to Pondicherry, what could be, possibly the concurrent sort of a list, and, do we have much of a role there, or is it the president, and the administrator running most of it? So we'll take a look at all of these sort of elements. So state may generally you have federalism. Federalism is when the constitution itself sort of in Indian case, right? The constitution itself pretty much tells you what is the state's authority, what comes under state authority, and what comes under the center's authority. But when it comes to your union territories, generally they are unitary. Okay, they are unitary. Okay. See, there were some union territories that eventually became a state. Himachal Pradesh, Manipur, Tripura, Goa, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram. Okay, they were states, sorry, they were union territories, but then eventually they got converted to a state. So they have a legislative assembly, they sort of manage their own affairs. They are not ruled from the center, or they're not, rule is a very strong word, I guess. We can stick with govern. Okay, so they're governed by the center. Now see, at present, how many union territories are there? There are 9 union territories, if you see it here. Right? Try to see if you can name all of these. These are things that we study in school, right? 7 union territories is what you must have studied in school, and the last couple of years you have added a couple more. The 2 new ones are going to be your Jammu Kashmir and then your Ladakh as well. Okay, so Andaman and Nicobar Islands, you have Delhi, you have Lakshadweep, you have Pondicherry or Puducherry, Chandigarh, Jammu Kashmir, and you have Ladakh. Now, what are the reasons for these sort of, and these are in different parts of the country. Is there any particular reason why, these are union territories? There are reasons, and they're not all the same reasons. There are a variety of reasons. For instance, some places have sort of, because of political and administrative sort of consideration. Delhi is the seat of the central government, and also it is a union territory where now you have a legislative assembly. So, it sort of makes sense to keep it as a union territory, although the members, the people of Delhi, okay, the National Capital Territory, they want statehood. Should Delhi be given statehood? Yes, no. See, for instance, if there is like Bangalore University, Karnataka based universities, right, you have some domicile requirements, right? For instance, you want to sort of study in any of the medical colleges or engineering colleges or any of these sort of universities, okay? There are some requirements, okay? You should have done your 11th and 12th or your junior college or your, what is that? PUC, right? Some things like that. Or maybe you should have done like N number of years, in this particular state, right? Things like that. Now, even Delhi wants that. Delhi University is generally open for students from all over the country. Okay, you must have heard of Lady Shri Ram, SRCC, Sri Ram College of Commerce, something like that, right? Miranda House. Right? Delhi University has got some really good university within St. Stephen's, right? Now, even the members of Delhi, the residents of Delhi want a separate sort of they want the quota for Delhi students, okay, things like that, things of that nature. But generally, we have this thing where Delhi is, for all of us. Right now, depending upon where you stay and what are the things that you have to share with outsiders coming into this place, right? You may have different sort of perspectives. Again, these are things that you can give a little more thought about. Okay, political and administrative sort of reason. What about cultural distinctiveness? If any of you guys have been to Pondicherry, you will know, or you just Google Pondicherry, okay, and then look at some pictures. Okay, go through your Insta feed or something. You will see in Pondicherry, your DNH and Daman and Diu. These are very, very different sort of regions. Okay, Pondicherry has a lot of French influence. Okay, Dadra, Nagar Haveli, and Daman and Diu, we'll talk about them. Okay, and there are some areas that are more from a strategic perspective. Okay, which are your Andaman and Nicobar Islands and your Lakshadweep. Okay, Lakshadweep. Okay, and then you also have certain other states which have become states, but they were union territories. But at that particular point, it was so that directly you can deal with the backward and tribal sort of people, okay, and their regions. Right now, it is not union territory anymore. In 2019, what had happened? We sort of Jammu Kashmir, from being a state, right? It has sort of been made into a two new union territories. Now take a look at Ladakh. Okay, Ladakh, and it is the reason that is given is that that it's a very large area, it's sparsely populated, and it's a very difficult sort of a terrain. Okay, and it has also been a long sort of a standing demand of the people of Ladakh to sort of provide it a status of a union territory and directly bring in some sort of development. Okay, so that way you're sort of going to be able to realize the aspirations or the local aspirations of the people. Okay, so that is one thing. Now, since the place is much smaller, the population is smaller, they are now going to have a separate sort of a legislature. However, the Jammu Kashmir portion of it that has become a union territory has been made a union territory on account of internal security and cross-border sort of a terrorism. No, this is not something that, this is new to us. Okay, a lot of news about Jammu Kashmir either is tourism, okay, or the weather or the beauty, okay, or it is generally about terrorism. Terrorism has resulted in it being sort of withdrawn from a statehood and then made into a union territory. Now, this place will continue with the legislature. Okay, it will continue with the legislature. Okay, now, I've not highlighted Article 239 to 241. I'm not too big in this. Generally, in prelims, they don't ask. But again, it depends on your sort of level of familiarity, right? In case you can remember these things, excellent. Although I remember for Delhi ke liye, it's 239 AA. How do I know this? Generally, what happens is when you read the newspaper and you read sort of articles, some of these things you will see so many darn times that you will not be able to forget it. Okay, 239 AA, right? I have not read this in many years, but I do still remember this. Okay, Similarly, like that, there will be some that you don't have to sort of, make a list and keep it in front of your table and, stick it in front of your face and keep looking through it every single day and trying to memorize. Okay, something to just ho jata hai. Okay, so here, let's take a look at this. So we have 9 union territories, but there is no uniformity in their administrative system. Each of these things has a different sort of a system. Now, every union territory is, again, is going to be administered by the president, okay, and he has some sort of an agent, okay, that is the administrator. He will be appointed by the president. And when we say president, who is the president acts on the aid and advice of?
Council of Ministers.
Perfect. The Council of Ministers headed by the
Prime Minister.
Okay, so always, just finish that thing as Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. Okay, an administrator of a union territory is an agent of the president and not the head of state like the governor, right? Not like the governor. Can you give me in one way in which it is not like the governor? The governor of the state has to act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister. And that is not applicable here. And that is why this is a union territory, right? And the president can, so I hope that is clear. The president can specify the designation of the administrator. Sometimes it might be called the lieutenant governor. It could be called the chief commissioner, administrator, whatever it is. Okay, that's just nomenclature. Okay, so what is the nomenclature right now? Lieutenant governor. Okay, in your Delhi, Puducherry, your Andaman and Nicobar Islands, your Jammu Kashmir, your Ladakh, right? And the person is called an administrator when it comes to your Chandigarh, Dadra Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu, and Lakshadweep. Okay, sometimes it happens that the governor of the adjoining state can be made the governor for the adjoining union territory. And if that is the case, okay, let us say that, Dadra Nagar Haveli and DNH and DND, right? They, if let us say I'm the president of the country and I decide, when I decide, I mean Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister, we decide to give the administration of these two sort of union territories to the governor of Gujarat, because that is where in and around that area is where the territory is at. Do I have to act in the aid and advice of my Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister of Gujarat? So look at the last statement or last couple of statements. Okay, and this is something that we saw in Gujarat, governor chapter as well. But again, it's been like 3-4 days since we finished that. So, you could get confused. So the president can also appoint a governor of a state as the administrator of an adjoining union territory. So let us say that, Gujarat governor can be appointed as the administrator, for example, okay, of DNH, Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. In that capacity, when he's sort of performing his duties as the governor for Daman and Diu and DNH, he acts independently of his Council of Ministers from Gujarat. Is that sort of clear? Now that is interesting, right? That is probably something that you would have missed. Is that okay? Now, how many union territories did we say have their own legislative assemblies? There are 3. Okay, you have your Pondicherry, you have your Delhi, you have Jammu Kashmir as well. Okay, Jammu Kashmir is the most recent one. Now, so that means you have a Council of Ministers and that will be headed by a Chief Minister, right? So that means that leaves us with 9 minus 3, right? So that means 6 union territories that do not have popular sort of elected political institutions or political sort of legislatures. So, but despite having such institutions, like your political legislatures, state legislatures, union territorial legislatures, it does not sort of reduce the supreme control of the president and parliament over these areas. And that is why it is called the union territories. Okay, union territories. Okay, so the parliament can make laws, okay, on any subject on the 3 lists. So it does not matter whether an item is present in the state list. The parliament can still make laws on those subjects that are present in your state list as well. That is why, again, union territory, remember that, okay, union territory mein the center has a lot of power. Okay, the power of the parliament extends even to those 3 union territories, your Pondicherry, Delhi and Jammu Kashmir, despite them having their own sort of local legislatures. Okay, so that means the legislative power of the Parliament of the Union Territories, despite despite the fact that they have some state legislature, okay, it still remains unaffected. So the Parliament's power does not go away just because you have a local legislature there. Okay, so look at the last 3-4 sentences. The Legislative Assembly of Delhi can make laws on any subject on the state list as well. Okay, and so can the Parliament, and the Parliament is a little more powerful. Okay, and in that state list, Delhi can make laws on everything in the state list except for 3 items. Okay, that is your public order, okay, public order police, okay, and also land. Similarly, the Legislative Assembly of your Delhi can also make laws on the concurrent list, right? So Parliament can make in all 3, but the state also has some power to make such laws. Likewise, the Legislative Assembly of Jammu Kashmir, similar kind of situation. They can make laws on any subject on the state list, except for, instead of having 3 items like you have in Delhi, you have 2 items, that is your public order and police. Okay, and then they can again make it in concurrent list. Right? Now, there is something called regulations made by the president. Regulations made by the president. Now, this is applicable where? Union Territories chapter. Remember this, Union Territories chapter. What are we talking about? We're talking about the president and the regulations he or she makes. Okay, and what are these sort of regulations? So the person can make some regulations for peace, progress, good governance, and all of that. Okay, and where are they applicable? Okay, so you have Andaman, Lakshadweep. Let me see if I can remember all of these things. Ladakh, DD. Okay, I remember it as all DD. Okay, all DD. Right? So Andaman and Nicobar, Lakshadweep, Ladakh, and Daman and Diu, and DNH. Right? In these places, the president can make regulations. Okay, and in case of Puducherry, okay, Puducherry. Okay, what happens here? The president can make these regulations, but when the assembly is either suspended or sort of dissolved. Sorry, dissolved. When is it generally suspended? So these are things during your state emergency and all of that, you will see suspension. But if it has been approved by the Parliament, okay, if it has been approved by the Parliament, by the houses, then that means that it is dissolved. Okay, so during this time period, the president can make regulations in Pondi. Okay, so remember this one. Okay, so there is something about presidents and his regulations or her regulations. Okay, now next thing is about courts. Okay, next thing is about courts. So what about courts? Let us say you're a resident in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Okay, you went to the local court, your sessions court, and whatever kind of courts that you had, and then you have to sort of appeal and go to a high court. Does Andaman and Nicobar have a high court?
No, sir.
So then where do you go for your high court related duties?
For
Maybe
Lakshadweep,
Kerala.
Kerala.
Kerala. Okay, wonderful.
For
So
Andaman.
that means,
Is it West Bengal for Andaman?
Yeah, it will go to your Calcutta High Court. Okay, Calcutta High Court. If anybody has been to Calcutta, it's like a very old Victorian building. Okay, and not too dissimilar from other places as well, right? Although I think a High Court in Hyderabad is, it's not Falaknama Palace, but one of those Chowmahalla Palace, one of those older buildings, something like that, right? I'm unable to recall. Anyway, what about, let us say, Pondicherry? Where would you go? You would go to Madras High Court. Chandigarh, where would you go? Punjab. Okay, Punjab and Haryana. Now, Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. Which High Court?
Gujarat.
It is Bombay High Court. Okay, it is Bombay High Court. Okay, so it's Bombay High Court. Okay, so at least one new thing that you've learned from this particular page. Okay, now remember this thing, Bombay High Court. See this particular statement, can you see this here? Bombay High Court has got jurisdiction over 2 union territories, Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. Okay, great. And some of you may not remember this thing, Andaman and Nicobar Island is for Calcutta. Okay, for Calcutta. In fact, Andaman and Nicobar Island have a lot of Bengalis. In fact, there are a lot of Bengalis there as well. In the 1900s, early 1900s onwards, you had a lot of members from India, Indian side of Bengal, your Bangladesh, and some eastern coast people, right? Tamilians. A lot of these people have gone and sort of, sought residence in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Previously, Andaman and Nicobar Islands was primarily, a place where you have these tribes. And you guys know the tribes. We've talked about some of those tribes as well. Shompen, where are those members from? Andaman or Nicobar? Okay, they're from Nicobar. Okay, they are from Nicobar. Shompens and Nicobaris. And who are the ones in Andaman and Nicobar? Andaman Islands? If anybody is interested in anthro optional, do let me know. Okay, I teach that. So in Andaman, you will have your Onge. You can Google this if you want, or you want to note it down, you can write it, because they generally do ask some questions about tribals. Onge, the Great Andamanese, Jarawa, and then you have the Sentinelese and the Sentinelese. Okay, now let's take a look at special provisions for Delhi. Special provisions for Delhi. I guess 239 AA is not mentioned here, but let's take a look at this. 69th Constitutional Amendment. What did that do? 69th Constitutional Amendment provided a special status to the Union Territory of Delhi. It designated as NCT of Delhi and designated administrator as Lieutenant Governor. Okay, it created a legislative assembly. So in which constitutional amendment did we get a legislative assembly of Delhi? Okay, that is going to be in 1991 69th Constitutional Amendment. Okay, that is sort of important. It is sort of important because, of course, now you have Arvind Kejriwal and whatever the local politics of that particular place. It all sort of traces its history to this particular moment in 1991 under the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay, now see, in New Delhi you have total of 70 members, and I believe in the very first attempt they had captured around 67 seats or something, or maybe that is after he had resigned and then he tried to come back to power. 60. They had like an unbelievable sort of a majority, right? They had an unbelievable sort of a majority. Now you have a total of 70 members, 60 plus members from one particular political party itself. Now they are directly elected by the people. The elections are conducted by Election Commission of India. The assembly can make laws on most of the matters, except in state list. There are 3 things that cannot be made by the state assembly, and that is going to be your public order, your police, and your land. Okay, and in fact, in like how we said, it is 15% sort of a cap. Do you guys remember what percent of your Lok Sabha can be your Council of Ministers, max? So yeah, okay, approximately around 75, something that we mentioned, right? So if you remember that, but technically it is given as 15% of the total number of legislatures. So executive cannot exceed more than 15% of the entire house. But in New Delhi, for 70 members, it is given as 10%. Max Council of Ministers. So that means what? Your CM plus your Council of Ministers can be, this guy is going to be 1, or this lady is going to be 1, and this is going to be 6. And this is going to be your total number of Council of Ministers. If you see here, yeah, 10% of the total strength of the assembly. Okay, that is 7, 1 chief minister and 6 other ministers. Okay, now the chief minister here is appointed by the president, not by the lieutenant governor. Okay, the other ministers are also appointed by the president directly. Okay, on the advice of the chief minister, so on the advice of what's his name, Arvind Kejriwal. Okay, and the ministers, similar kind of other stories. Now let us say, and this is an issue that keeps cropping up, right? Sometimes the legislative assembly, or the governor of New Delhi and the legislative assembly members in New Delhi, they don't generally see eye to eye. right? So sometimes there will be like a dharna, there will be a sit-in, there will be complaints from both ends, right? You will notice that. See, in case of difference of opinion between the lieutenant governor and his ministers, okay, the lieutenant governor is to refer the matter to the president. So just remember that. So if there is a difference of opinion between the lieutenant governor and the ministers, what do? Okay, refer it to the president. That is the technicality. Can we have, something like emergency or president's rule in Delhi? So in case of failure of constitutional machinery, the president can impose his rule in this territory. Okay, and this can be done either on the report of the lieutenant governor saying that the failure of constitutional machinery in this particular state, or even otherwise. Okay, so this will sort of be like a similar sort of a method like your president's rule or state emergency. Okay, and the lieutenant governor can also sort of promulgate ordinances, when the assembly is not in function or functioning, or it is in recess. Okay, and that is a very similar sort of a ordinance like any other sort of ordinance that we've talked about. Now that we've seen union territories, how about we try to solve some questions regarding these topics? Okay, so I hope it's clear. So we've looked at most of the important parts of this particular chapter, elaborated on some specific states. Let's just take a look at some of these questions. And I believe I have some 10, 11 questions maybe. Okay, so an administrator of a union territory is an agent of the President of India and not head of state like the governor. Is this a true statement or is this wrong? Head of state like the governor. Is this a true statement or is this wrong? So this would be a statement that is true. Okay, it is an agent of the President of India and it is not similar to the state governor. Okay, like we have just discussed. So that is going to be a true sort of a statement. What about the second statement? The second statement is going to be the parliament can make laws on any subject, okay, of any subject of the three lists. That includes your state list as well. Okay, so generally what do we say? We have a state list. Okay, and who's going to make this? Okay, the state wala assembly. This is normal states. Okay, and then you have concurrent list. Okay, and then we have the union list. So who gets to make laws on the union list, guys?
The parliament.
Okay, wonderful, Manvi. Okay, good. I think your preparation is going quite well. Okay, and in the concurrent list, you will have your state, okay, and also your parliament, state assembly or your parliament. Okay, but if both of them make a law on the same sort of a thing, then the parliament's law will sort of override the state's law. Very, very sort of logical, right? Because, more power to the center. That's how our model is. So if that is the case, the parliament can make laws on any of the three lists. In your union territories, it can make in both. So that is going to be your C. But if this was something like your state, then the parliament cannot make laws on the state list. Okay, the constitution clearly provides for the states having certain authorities and certain functions and certain duties in which the center cannot sort of intervene or sort of take over that function except under some extraordinary sort of circumstances. Okay, but we're not talking about exceptions, we're talking about what is the general way. Question number 2, let's take a look at another question. Okay, the president can make regulations for peace, progress, and good governance or good government of which of these? Now, if possible, try to see if you can answer this, even without going back to your book. What would be the answer? Anybody?
Option A.
Option A. Okay, option A. So that means you're not eliminating anything. Okay, you would include even Chandigarh. If you remember, when we talk about regulation, let's go back to when we talked about regulations. So if you remember this, right, the president can make regulation for peace, progress, and good government. So in this, you have Andaman and Nicobar Islands, you have Lakshadweep, Daman and Diu, Dadra Nagar Haveli, and Ladakh, all DD. Okay, all DD. Okay, all DD channels, however you want to remember this. So again, these are things that, in one go, it might seem too much for you to take in. And that's why, you may want to make some of your own tricks, because I cannot go over every single sort of a trick that I've used to sort of help me, lock these concepts down in my head. So in that, I have my A, I have my L, I have my D, I have my T, and I'm missing my Ladakh. Okay, and Chandigarh is not part of that. So the president can make regulations of peace, progress, and good government. Okay, for these. Okay, you have this thing for your Puducherry as well, but under certain circumstances. So the option here is going to be not 5 and 5 no. So that is going to be this. Okay, so that is going to be 2B. Is that clear? Are you guys able to see? Again, all about some small sort of sentences that you may miss, right? 20% easy questions, 60% sort of moderate questions, and some, another 15-20% could be even relatively difficult questions. Okay, so these sort of questions would be that it is probably there in the book, but kaun yaad rakhega bhai, so it's something like that. How much can we really remember? But try to see if you can have that sort of familiarity. Try to make some sort of a tricks in order for you to remember these. Polity is your ticket to clearing it. Okay, there are some other sort of easy topics as well. Like for instance, economy is relatively easy if you're sort of so inclined, right? So just find that. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so you have, it can be in ALLDD. Okay, let's take a look at a few more. Okay, which of the following constitutional amendment acts provide for the special status to the Union Territory of Delhi and redesignated it as the National Capital Territory of Delhi? Anybody? It's okay if it is wrong. Okay, and chances are that you will have 69th Amendment Act, Priya. Okay, wonderful. Can you tell me which year?
1991.
1991, Manvi. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so that is great. Good. I'm sort of surprised that you guys can remember these numbers. Numbers are the hardest thing to sort of keep in mind, right? It's hard to sort of form a logic with these numbers, but I'm glad that you do. Okay, great. Now tell me, let's do match the following. Match the following are always the best. Andaman and Nicobar Island. Which court?
Calcutta.
Calcutta.
Calcutta High Court.
Okay, Calcutta High Court. Wonderful. Dadra Nagar Haveli.
Bombay High Court.
Bombay High Court.
Bombay High Court. Wonderful. Priya and Manvi. Lakshadweep.
High Court.
Kerala High Court. Excellent. And Puducherry.
Madras.
And for Punjab High Court, what can I go for?
Chandigarh.
Okay, so now this would be wonderful. Okay, that's great. Now, can you tell me what is it? A4, B is 1, C is 5, and D is 2. What is my option? Okay, so that is going to be my B. Is that B? Is that right? Yeah, that should be right. Last sort of couple of questions. Which of the following, oopsie. Which of the following can put a union territory under the jurisdiction of the High Court of the adjacent state? President, Chief Justice, Parliament, Administrator of the concerned union territory. No worries. Okay, good. See, because it's relatively new, right? But High Court. The Parliament can establish a High Court for a union territory or put it under the jurisdiction of a High Court for an adjacent state. Now, see, we read it, right? But, is it going to be extremely sort of, fresh in your mind? Possibly not. Okay, and when it is not fresh, then we start going with some sort of a logic. But rather, if you can just remember and be familiar with it, you would probably know the answer is your Parliament. But why can it not be President? Right? The union territory may, you sort of have more sort of a role for the union, the president. So maybe you could have gone with president if you were not 100% sure, right? You might think that, okay, Chief Justice, not necessarily, or maybe, I don't know how you would think, okay, administrator, but when you give an administrator and a president, you would probably choose the president of the administrator. But however, it is neither of them. It is going to be your Parliament. Okay, it is going to be your Parliament. Which one of the following union territories has a court of its own?
Delhi High Court.
Delhi.
Delhi has a High Court? Sure.
Yes, sir.
So Delhi High Court is the same as Supreme Court, is it? Sorry?
No, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, clear. Okay, and I like the way you say it with confidence and conviction. Okay, so that is good. I think we are done with, okay, I guess these are the last two questions, and if not, we will end this topic with these two last questions. Okay, because I think you're answering most of these, and if you're not answering these, then it is because, you know, one or two sentences sort of are throwing you off. In the case of Puducherry, the President of India can legislate by making regulations only, option A, when the Parliament passes a resolution to that effect, B, when the Assembly passes a resolution to that effect, C, when the Assembly is suspended or dissolved, and D, when the Lieutenant Governor requests him to do so. In the case of Puducherry, the President of India can legislate by making regulations, okay, only in the case of
when the assembly is suspended, so
when the Assembly is suspended or dissolved. Okay, so that's a different voice. I'm guessing that's Supriya. Hello, Supriya. And let us take a look at why. Do you guys remember we talked about peace and regulation, all of these things? So we're talking about the regulation. So in case of Puducherry, this particular statement, see, the thing is, you know, when I look at the book of Laxmikanth, if there is a particular question, there is an MCQ, I know exactly like even which part of the book it is in. Okay, it's like my image memory. You know, it's on the left hand side top corner, you know, and I have some green lighting, highlighting, and then some little bit of pink highlighting there, right? That is sort of there for me. So that is, you know, eventually it's more familiarity, that is it. Okay, so I know where it is at, but let us see if, you know, we can get that clarity by rereading this particular portion. That's how you generally use it. Look at the question, come back to the book, and try to sort of take that point in as well. So in the case of Puducherry, the President can legislate by making regulations, but what is the condition? Only when the Assembly is suspended or dissolved. So kudos to Supriya ji for having the right answer. Okay, and what is it? So that means when the Assembly is suspended or dissolved. Is that clear? Are you sort of getting, you know, how to solve these answers even if you're not able to get it in the very first attempt? Right? It is about going back and trying to take a look at, you know, these small sort of sentences that may have sort of slipped, okay, or you may have sort of overlooked them. Okay, hope that is clear. Then question number 11. Consider the following statements. The Constitution of India contains separate provisions for the administration of acquired territories. The constitutional provisions for the administration of union territories also apply to the acquired territories. So meaning, what exactly is the point here? The point here is union territories are one thing, but what if you sort of acquire new territories? And if you acquire new territories, does that mean, you know, you have to sort of have different constitutional provisions, or will that also, you know, apply the same sort of principles that we have for union territories?
Same constitutional
Option
provisions.
B.
Is it because of the way I phrased that statement? Are you saying that with that logic? Or have you read, or do you know this?
No, it's just a guess, sir.
It's just a guess. Okay, that is a very smart guess, Priya. See, one thing is, see, it contains separate provisions. Okay, it applies this, you know, same provisions. So that means these are mutually exclusive. Okay, so even if you don't know, and if you want to be smart, sort of a, you know, a guessing person, then it has to be, it cannot be 1 and 2. Okay, and it will possibly not be neither 1 and 2, either of these things. So it could be A or B. Okay, now again, Illi Nodu. Okay, the Constitution does not contain any separate provisions for the administration of acquired territories. Does not contain any separate provisions, but the constitutional provisions for administrative union territories shall also apply the acquired territories. Okay. So does that, I mean, I hope that gives you some level of confidence, some sort of insight into how to prepare and be able to get, you know, that 13. See, for instance, right now you might have gotten 3 wrong out of, let's say, 12 questions or something. Okay. Now, but in case you want to get it all 12 or at least 11 out of 12, what is the thing that you could have done, right? Probably it would have required. And for any of you who are looking at this chapter for maybe like the second time or third time, right? It is not going to be possible for you to be able to get all 11 out of 12. To 11 out of 12 is quite a bit of mazduri. Okay, a lot of effort that goes into it. But however, with adequate reading and familiarity, this book can be mastered. It just takes time. Okay, but 20-30 minutes per day, even after the end of our sort of crash course, will ensure that you have that confidence. Okay, so when you guys walk into your exam hall, Naveen and Manvi's and Priya and Rahul and Supriya, when you walk into the classroom, you will feel like, hey, I don't think there can be anybody who's got that hold on, my Laxmikanth, like how I do. Right. So with that confidence, when you go, of course, you will get your 13 out of 15, or you're going to get your 18 out of 20 minimum. Okay, for sure. Okay, and then that day you will remember, okay, that what we had decided, this is our strategy, and we are going to sort of smoke it. Okay, we are going to sort of rock it using this particular strategy, right? Have you guys watched this movie called Gladiator? Russell Crowe. I think it was in early 2000 something. Okay. Well, it's a good movie. I don't know if you'll have time to watch it, but in that there is a famous sort of a statement. So basically there is this king who gets sort of taken in as a prisoner, and sort of he lands up as a gladiator. Gladiators do what? They go and fight, sometimes against other men, and possibly sometimes against tigers and lions or whatever it is, okay, to entertain the others. So his sort of captor, he basically tells him, okay, it is not about killing very quick. Okay, he says, win the crowd and win your freedom. Win the crowd and win your freedom. Similarly, in UPSC, I will probably, at least for your prelims, I will tell you, okay, master your Laxmikanth, okay, and win your ticket to mains. Master your Laxmikanth and win your ticket to mains. There are so many books that you want to sort of read, okay, but there are some books that require a little better sort of a reading, and the return on investment of doing such reading is a little more on these sort of books. Okay, any questions, any doubts, any apprehensions about prelims, about where you stand, strategy related issues, those kind of things, not technical details?
All right, guys, so that brings us to the close of our video. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you found the video to be useful. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the very next video.